We now have first-person intel from inside the Westview anomaly.
What are we looking at here? Is it an alternate reality, time travel?
It's a sitcom.
Starring 2 Avengers?
It's a working theory. Life moves fast out in the suburbs.
I think something's wrong here.
Should we just take it from the top?
Wanda!
I don't know how any of this started.
What is outside of Westview?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. It's probably just a case of the Mondays. Am I right?
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my WandaVision Episode 5 trailer video. There's a whole bunch of stuff explaining what's going on the next couple of episodes, so we'll break it all down. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs as well. If you're brand new to the channel, I'm doing videos for all the WandaVision episodes. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. We're still doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and just post all your theories in the comments below. It is only going to get crazier as we go forward, as the trailer footage implies, but careful for spoilers if you haven't seen any of the episodes yet. We'll just go through this shot by shot, and then I'll explain some of the other big theories too. Like, I know everyone's still asking about the Hexagons and what's going on with the larger cosmic characters. Don't worry, we'll cover all that stuff. But the trailer starts with the Tyler Hayward, director of S.W.O.R.D. character, briefing the other agents about the situation after having recovered Monica Rambeau at the end of episode 4. She's the person he's referring to when he says that they now have first-person intel from inside the barrier. Notice behind them on all the monitors, they've already changed to the 1980s, they've moved forward in the timeline, and inside the alternate House of M reality, they're in the middle of this scene from the other trailers where Agnes comes in the workout gear, the 80s looking workout gear, and says they have to redo a scene like, hey, should we just take it from the top? And just completely shocks Scarlet Witch when she seemingly realizes that Agnes knows about her rewinding time every time something crazy happens that she doesn't like. Like, anytime Vision seems like he's starting to figure out what's really going on, something's wrong here. Like, nope, we don't want him to find out that he's actually still dead. But it does seem like Agnes knows what Scarlet Witch is doing when she rewinds time, even though when she was talking to Herb earlier, it didn't seem totally like that. I'll talk about this in greater detail in just a second, but it seems like some of the people inside the town know what's happening to them, that they're trapped. Like, Herb knows that he's trapped, that's why he's cutting through the barrier, trying to get out. But also Agnes, or Agatha Harkness, seems like she knows even more about it than the others do. Then they're giving Monica Rambeau a full medical exam inside a containment area, like they're not totally sure what happened to her while she was in the middle of going all Stepford Wives through the decades, because as we saw, for a brief period, her mind also succumbed to Scarlet Witch's influence, and she believed that she was the Geraldine character. It wasn't until crazy things and loud noises, like really WTF things happened, that kind of shook her out of that, and she started to remember who she was and where she was. Without more evidence right now, my theory is the reason why some of the townspeople, like Dottie, for instance, has the same moment like that. When something crazy happens, it kind of shakes her, and she's like, wait a minute, who are you? What am I doing here? She kind of realizes what's happening. The reason why some of the townspeople, who we know are mostly just normal citizens of the United States living in Westview, New Jersey before Scarlet Witch came along, why they're able to shake the influence is probably because they have stronger wills than some of the other people. It probably has something to do with that. It's the same thing with Odin and Loki during Thor Ragnarok. Like, he says it took him a while to shake Loki's magic trick that he pulled on him to make him believe that he was a homeless person. Like, your mother would have been very impressed with that magic spell you put on me. It took me quite a while to get rid of it. Like, if Doctor Strange got trapped inside the House of M alternate reality, if he got sucked into the scenario, he would also probably figure out pretty quickly what was going on just because he's so powerful. Then Jimmy Woo is questioning the nature of the phenomenon. Is it multiverse? Is this an alternate reality? Is it time travel? Because those are twists that they just used in Avengers Endgame with the quantum realm and alternate timelines. Darcy gives the more practical answer. It's a sitcom. And then, they just make the joke about it starring 2 Avengers. Really, it's meant to be a combination of those different twists. Not time travel in the traditional sense, but Scarlet Witch has been shown to control the flow of time, rewinding things like you would a VCR tape, and speeding up the flow of time through the future decades. But then you see them in full 80s attire in the park in front of the Westview Library. Then Scarlet Witch has the voiceover talking about how life moves really fast out in the suburbs, literally and metaphorically because of what's happening during the series. So it's a meta reference to the quick pace with which they're moving through the different decades, episode to episode. even though they did break that a little bit during episode 4, the storytelling format, because episode 4 was basically them just replaying the events of the first 3 episodes, but from Monica Rambeau and Sword's perspective in the normal MCU world. Starting with episode 5, though, next week, it seems like they'll be moving forward at least 1 decade in each new episode, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, then present day, while also bouncing back and forth between Sword people outside and Scarlet Witch, Vision, and their children, the townspeople, on the inside. This scene could still be during the 80s or during the 90s. It looks a little bit more like the 90s just based on all the design and their clothing, but I think they're blending a lot of footage from different future episodes in this trailer, so it could be footage from the 90s episode as well. It looks like she's just picking things up all over the house. You have the kids' toys behind her, Billy and Tommy, Wiccan and Speed. We'll see toddler and older versions of them through each of the episodes, like much older speaking parts. They'll cast different child actors to play them. Then you see Vision in the Halloween episode, which I believe is supposed to be the 90s episode. That might be episode 6. Walking through the suburb streets as she talks about life moving really fast in the suburbs with kids and families dressed up everywhere running around. He's in the Halloween version of his classic comic book costume, just like Scarlet Witch. I can't wait to see that. Vision starts to notice that things are glitching out, something is wrong. Then you have that voiceover dialogue, I think that something is wrong here. It's just another version of the conversation that they kept trying to have in the last couple of episodes before she rewinds things like, oh no, he's starting to figure it out. It seems like the glitches start to get worse and worse and worse as Scarlet Witch starts to lose control of what's going on. Losing control of her mental state, her mental health starts to deteriorate, but also things start to get weirder and crazier. There have been some leaks recently about stuff that happens in the next couple of episodes, so please don't post spoilers about that in the comments below. We're only going to have to wait like a week or 2 to get that stuff anyway, so it's not like we're going to have to wait forever to talk about it, those big surprises. Then in a separate scene, Scarlet Witch is speaking to Vision or someone else saying that she doesn't know how any of this craziness with the sitcom started, and it sounds like she's being truthful, like she doesn't understand how her cosmic powers work or anything about the relic cosmic radiation background effects, the same type of energy as the Big Bang tied to her ability to create things and change things out of thin air, basically the MCU version of her reality warping powers in the comics. That also gets back to the Infinity Stones and how her power is connected to them. The way that the Infinity Stones manipulate the same type of cosmic energy to do what they do, altering the universe when people wield them. This is obviously just connecting things back to her origin story, the Mind Stone unlocking her powers. Then you see the scenes from her in more modern day settings of her messing with everything in the living room. It looks kind of like the Modern Family episode when she's talking to the camera of her in the pajamas. Talk about a case of the Mondays. That's probably one of the funnier lines from any of the trailers. Like she's talking about crazy WTF battles and things going off the rails, and she's trying to pass it off like she's totally fine, even though it's clear that she's deteriorating mentally, and she just calls it a case of the Mondays. Then you see separate, really WTF scenes of Vision pushing his way, like tearing his way through the barrier outside Westview, being able to make contact with the Sword agents. This raises a really huge question. What happens to Vision when he goes outside the barrier? Because Scarlet Witch created the other things that have survived outside from nothing, or it involved people who were still alive. Vision is technically still dead. Like we make the Weekend at Bernie's jokes, like she's just walking around with a dead Vision, animating his corpse, kind of re-skinning him. She didn't really bring him back to life in the same way. She didn't create a brand new Vision. This is the old Vision, and he's technically still dead. So early theory, I think that's why at the end of the series, why her children will still be able to survive outside, but Vision might not be able to survive after the end of WandaVision, after this all collapses. And that's probably just because of the way she brought him back versus the way that she created the other things out of nothingness. So we'll have to wait for the next couple of episodes before we have a better theory about what happens to Vision after this. I have better theories about the kids than I do about Vision, but I do think that the idea is that she'll have to say goodbye to Vision, but she'll be able to keep the children. Like the whole series is about her getting over Vision's death. That's the whole reason why she's doing all this, because she just can't deal with it. So her arc in the series is she's able to complete her hero's journey, so to speak. She would eventually accept his death by the end. Then there's another scene of Vision flying off in his normal Avengers costume in broad daylight, like they're heading into battle, Scarlet Witch in her modern-day sweats just unleashing this huge blast of energy at someone. Then a completely separate scene of a giant wave of her red energy changing everything in the town from black and white 1950s looking to color and modern-day looking. The way they presented her changing reality, it seems more like a wipe transition like at the end of episode 2, but this might just be what it looks like for a normal person outside the barrier if they were to see her changing everything through the decades, like a giant wave of energy. You also notice in the later footage, the exterior of the dome becomes visible. It turns red, crackling with energy, whereas in the earlier episodes, it's completely invisible. Then you see the scene of her in her modern-day Avengers costume flying inside what seems like some sort of high-tech facility. Hard to tell if this scene is a flashback happening before the events of episode 1, or it's from the future and it's happening after the next couple of episodes. But I know you have all kinds of questions about some of the Easter eggs that have popped up in the last episode, especially the Hexagons, because the Hexagons show up everywhere. They're wondering about why Scarlet Witch's barrier around her alternate reality is a hexagon shape, but the sword base itself is a hexagon structure, and if you look at Nick Fury in the sword space station with all the Skrulls technology, there are hexagons on the screen behind him too. And you keep in mind too, that this is happening on Wandavision 3 weeks after Avengers Endgame. In Spider-Man Far From Home, this Nick Fury post-credit scene is happening 8 months after Avengers Endgame. So Spider-Man Far From Home, this Nick Fury scene is happening well after what happens on Wandavision. The whole idea with the hexagons, and I'll probably talk about this more in some of my other bonus videos when we see more Easter eggs for it, the hexagon itself is a naturally occurring phenomenon, and the reason why this is probably a hexagon is because it's one of the strongest structures in nature. It's also the most efficient structure in nature, which is why you see it occurring naturally so many places. I think there's this concept called the honeycomb conjecture. Like, why do bees' honeycombs have hexagon structures instead of some other shape? Because technically a triangle would be the strongest shape, but a hexagon is made up of a bunch of triangles effectively. The reason why it is because mathematically it's been proven that the hexagon is the most efficient structure. Like even in the Sanctum, when Doctor Strange is studying all those magical tomes, you notice that the bookshelves are honeycomb structured. That's because it's the most efficient structure. But it's also one of the strongest structures in nature. So I think low-key, the reason why they're looking at her barrier here and it's a hexagon is because it's just naturally the strongest structure. And also, when you see the Guardians of the Galaxy ship in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 traveling through the different jump gates, it also turns into a hexagon-looking barrier. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's just because that's the most efficient and strongest structure naturally occurring. Like they're trying to say that Scarlet Witch's dome here, like the special bubble around her alternate reality House of M, is meant to be almost impregnable. But what'll happen is I have a couple other big bonus videos. There's some cool Fantastic Four Easter eggs during episode 4. I'll talk about those this weekend. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming up, so leave all your requests for bonus videos in the comments below. My full episode 5 video will post next Friday just like normal. Everyone click here for my full WandaVision episode 4 video, and click here for my WandaVision Doctor Strange video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.